Next is to celebrate risk takers. I'm sorry. This is the conversation about risk in the corporate world is always framed with a dichotomy. At the same time, we like the idea of taking on risk. If you want any office today and talk about risk, you're gonna hear some big speeches about, okay, risks, we like risk, we know that. But the truth is, in practice, we try to avoid risk at any cost. We try to manage it, we try to minimize it and eliminate it because we're afraid with the failures that come with that risk. This is often the result of a lack of understanding of risks. So without risk taken, there will be no innovation. We saw that in the last point. But even if we eliminate all risks, failure is gonna happen, is possible to happen. Actually, the biggest failure is not being able to innovate. To be able to take on some risks, you have to understand what kind of risk you should be taken and what kind of failure is acceptable and what kind of failure is not. So the first kind of failures that are really not acceptable is the one which is easy to prevent. We are working to build something, we know a reliable and predictable way to doing it, but for some reason we didn't follow the process and failure happened. This is in the software development world. We saw this often. Teams who try to adopt DevOps, or like they have a clear CI/CD for deployments, and one day a developer, to save some time or something, bypass it, ship code to production, and introduce an error. That error gets to the users, and you have an issue. This is not the kind of failure or risk taken that should be celebrated. This is something that should be avoided and make sure it doesn't happen in the future. The second kind of failure, it's something that is caused by outside circumstances. We know how to do things like the first kind of failures. Everything we did perfectly, but some outside forces beyond our control made us fail instead of succeeding. Sorry. This is something that also everybody who works with software engineering, especially since the advent of the cloud, know it's really good. Either you have some cloud provider with some availability issues, or some external provider, some service, some SaaS or something is down, and that is causing you this kind of failure. The third one, and this is the one that we are talking about, is the one that is worth celebrating, is that there is not actually failures, they are just steps to better understand and better deliver. They are the result of thoughtful risk. So when the failures happen, we knew it's gonna happen. We have some assumptions, we know that might work, might not work, and we tried. If they work, they would have achieved something great, but they didn't, so we failed. In that case, this kind of failures should be celebrated. If you do your due diligence about the risk taken, you will know that this kind of failures, when it happens, is not that big of a surprise. This celebration will lead you to create a culture where people are encouraged to take on more risk and going beyond what they can do. They create kind of climate where people know that thoughtful risk taking is welcome, and they encourage people to report failure in a timely way rather than dragging them out too long. This is really important to make sure that you can develop a remediation plan in time. Sixth tactic is to get people out of the shadows. As we saw earlier, some people talk, some people doesn't talk. Providing a climate where psychological safety is a priority is a good idea, but doesn't always guarantee that everybody is going to talk. So start by using people's strengths. You know, somebody is really good at some part of the code or really good in some programming language or something. So when the conversation moves to that aspect, you can try to ask questions to that person. Something as simply, hey, developer X or engineer Y, you have more experience than everybody about the subject. Do you want to give your thought about it? Or like, you worked with this language. Can you talk more about it? Or like, we know that you have knowledge in this area of the code. We might need your input. If you are unable to pinpoint where is the strength of somebody in your team, start small and easy. Try to throw them a softball, something that is easy, that can get them to start talking and expressing their opinion. One other thing that you can do, and this is something that is related to the fact that some people not speaking is not because they have nothing to say or because they are afraid, but because the act of speaking in public might be a little bit hard for them. And this is using non-verbal tools. Since the start of the pandemic, we all work remotely, so we're all familiar with sticky notes, with tools that are online that allow us to give feedback. And even before the start of the pandemic, I saw a lot of retros who are run using sticky note, a lot of brainstorming that are run the same way. This has the advantage of getting people who are either like having hard time pronouncing some word, or English is not the first language like me, to speak out more and try to get their thoughts out of their brain. Also, this will help if you have a large setting and you need to hear from a lot of people. Everybody speaking at the same time is going to be chaos, but everybody adding sticky notes at the same time is possible. Just a quick heads up, this tactics and tools are used to encourage people to talk, but they are not a substitute for speaking up. A culture of psychological safety need to make people to speak up, use their word, because you can't always count on having sticking out in a meeting or something. And we need people to be able to, when they notice something, say out loud, okay, this is not gonna work. I know a better way of doing this, or like, this is something that I'm scared about.